Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her maintenance glove, leaving a streak of grease across her dark skin. The ventilation system in Sector 7 had been acting up again, and as the newest member of the maintenance crew aboard Galactic Council Station Omega, she always got the worst assignments. 3 months into her job, and she was still trying to prove herself worthy of working alongside the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The station hummed around her with the constant activity of 1,000 different species going about their daily business. Through the maintenance shaft, she could hear the melodic trill of avian traders negotiating with the deep rumbling bass of mineral-based life forms. Somewhere in the distance, the sharp clicking of insectoid communications mixed with the flowing liquid speech of the aquatic delegation. But down here in the maintenance tunnels, Sarah worked alone, as humans usually did. She pulled up her work tablet and scrolled through the remaining tasks for the day. Most were routine: replacing worn filters, checking power conduits, updating atmospheric recyclers. But one entry made her frown. A simple notation: Hangar 94X, environmental systems check. Priority low. Clearance level 7. Sarah checked her badge. Level 5 clearance, just like every other human on the station. But the assignment had come through official channels, stamped with the maintenance department's approval. Someone had either made a mistake or they expected her to handle what she could and request additional clearance later. She shrugged and gathered her tools. Better to show initiative than to sit around doing nothing. The journey to Hangar 94X took her through parts of the station she had never seen before. The corridors grew wider and more ornate as she traveled deeper into the restricted sections. Walls that had been simple metal plating in the maintenance areas were now decorated with flowing patterns that seemed to shift and change as she walked past them. The lighting grew softer, more sophisticated, adapting to her presence in ways that suggested advanced AI monitoring. Other workers became fewer and farther between. The species she encountered here were different too. Older, more prestigious members of the galactic community. Ancient crystalline beings whose bodies were composed of living gemstone moved with the slow dignity of creatures who had witnessed the birth and death of stars. Tall, elegant, ethereal beings seemed to float rather than walk, their translucent forms shimmering with internal light. None of them paid any attention to the young human maintenance worker with her simple tools and basic uniform. Sarah began to feel increasingly out of place. Her footsteps echoed too loudly in the vast corridors. Her breathing seemed harsh compared to the nearly silent movements of the beings around her. She checked her tablet again, confirming the hangar number, and pressed forward. When she finally reached Hangar 94X, she stood before a door unlike any she had seen on the station. It was massive, easily 30 feet tall and twice as wide, made from what appeared to be a single piece of black metal that reflected her image in impossible ways. Instead of the standard access panels she was used to, this door featured a complex array of scanning devices that hummed and clicked as she approached. Identifying life form. A smooth, genderless voice announced from speakers she couldn't locate. Species: human. Name: Sarah Chen. Maintenance level 5. Purpose of visit? Sarah held up her tablet, showing the work order to what she hoped was a visual scanner. Environmental systems check. I have a work order. Silence stretched for long moments. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, wondering if she should turn back and report the access issue to her supervisor. Just as she was about to leave, the voice spoke again. Work order verified. Entry granted. Please note, Hangar 94X contains classified materials. Unauthorized interaction with hangar contents is strictly prohibited. Violation will result in immediate detention and memory adjustment. The massive door split down the middle with a sound like distant thunder, sliding apart to reveal a hangar so vast that Sarah couldn't see the far walls. Emergency lighting flickered on as she stepped inside, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and shift around her. The air felt different here, heavier somehow, charged with an energy that made the hair on her arms stand on end. And there, in the center of the hangar, sat the most beautiful and terrifying object Sarah had ever seen. The ship. For it was clearly a ship, though unlike any in the databases she had studied, rose from the hangar floor like a sleeping giant. Its hull was composed of what appeared to be overlapping scales of dark metal, each one etched with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with faint internal light. The vessel was enormous, easily 500 meters from nose to tail, its form suggesting both organic growth and precise engineering. Graceful curves flowed into sharp angles, and surfaces that looked smooth from a distance revealed complex geometric textures as Sarah drew closer. But it was more than just the ship's appearance that struck her. There was a presence to it, a sense of awareness that made her feel as though she was being watched. not by security systems or automated sensors, but by something alive and conscious. Something that was evaluating her with an intelligence vast and alien. Sarah forced herself to focus on her job. Environmental systems check. She pulled out her scanner and began taking readings of the air composition, temperature, and humidity levels around the ship. Everything appeared normal, better than normal, actually. The air here was cleaner than in most parts of the station, suggesting that whatever systems maintained this hangar were operating at peak efficiency. As she worked her way around the ship's perimeter, Sarah couldn't help but notice details that seemed impossible. The hull showed no seams, no joints, no indication of how it had been assembled. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to shift subtly in the light, revealing new patterns and textures that hadn't been visible moments before. And despite the ship's obviously advanced construction, there were no visible weapons ports, no engine exhausts, no external systems that she could identify. "How do you even fly?" Sarah murmured to herself, running her hand along what she assumed was the ship's flank. The surface was warm to the touch and seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. The moment her palm made contact with the hull, everything changed. Light exploded through the ship's surface, racing along the etched patterns like fire through dry grass. The hangar's emergency lighting was overwhelmed by the brilliant illumination pouring from the vessel, casting Sarah's shadow in sharp relief against the walls. A sound filled the air, not mechanical, but almost musical, like the singing of crystal chimes, in harmony with deep, thrumming bass notes. Sarah jerked her hand back, stumbling away from the ship in alarm. Her scanner was going crazy, registering energy readings that shouldn't have been possible from a supposedly dormant vessel. But the ship was clearly no longer dormant. Light continued to pulse along its hull in waves, and Sarah could feel the air around her vibrating with power. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," she muttered, backing toward the hangar entrance. This is why humans aren't supposed to touch the fancy alien stuff. But the ship wasn't finished. As Sarah watched in growing amazement and terror, sections of the hull began to shift and reconfigure. Panels slid aside to reveal systems and components that definitely hadn't been visible before. The ship was awakening, coming online, responding to her touch in ways that seemed impossible. And then it spoke. Not through speakers or communication systems, but directly into her mind. The voice was vast and ancient, carrying undertones of wisdom and sadness that seemed to echo from across centuries. "Finally," it said, and Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes at the profound relief contained in that single word. "I have been waiting so very long." Sarah's knees gave out, and she found herself sitting on the hangar floor, staring up at the impossible ship that was now fully illuminated, its systems coming online one by one with melodic chimes and harmonious tones. Her scanner clattered to the floor beside her, forgotten. "You're alive," she whispered. "I am the Eternal Voyager," the ship replied, its mental voice growing clearer and stronger as more systems activated. "I am the last of the Builder's great works, created in the time before time when the galaxy was young and full of wonders that have since been forgotten. I have waited in this place for 317 of your years, 4 months and 6 days. I have been tested by thousands of beings from hundreds of species. All have failed to awaken me." "But I'm just a maintenance worker," Sarah said, her voice small in the vast hangar. "I'm nobody special." "You are human," the ship replied, and Sarah could feel something like warm laughter in its voice. "Do you not understand what that means? Your species is young, yes, barely a few thousand years since you discovered fire. Less than a century since you reached for the stars. But in that brief time, you have accomplished something that no other species in the galaxy has managed." The ship's systems continued to come online around them. Sarah could see what looked like weapon systems emerging from previously smooth hull sections, sensor arrays unfolding like metallic flowers, and propulsion systems that seemed to bend space around them in ways that hurt to look at directly. "I don't understand," Sarah said. "Your species bonds," the Eternal Voyager explained. "Not just with each other, though that in itself is remarkable. Humans bond with their tools, their vehicles, their homes. You name your ships and speak to them as if they were alive. You form emotional connections to objects that other species view as mere resources. A Zephyrian pilot sees a ship as a tool to be mastered. A crystalline navigator views a vessel as a problem to be solved through logic and mathematics. But a human, the ship paused, and Sarah felt its attention focus on her like sunlight through a magnifying glass. A human sees a ship as a partner, a friend. A living thing worthy of respect and care. This is why I was created, Sarah Chen of Earth. Not to serve a master, but to work alongside a friend. The implications of what the ship was saying began to sink in. Sarah looked around the hangar, noting the security systems, the restricted access, the obvious importance of this place. "You've been waiting here for a human," she said slowly. "But why? What makes you so special that the Galactic Council would keep you locked away?" The Eternal Voyager's hull pulsed with brighter light, and Sarah felt its amusement. "I am more than a ship, Sarah Chen. I am a key. The builders, my creators, left behind many secrets scattered throughout the galaxy. Technologies that could advance civilization by millennia. Knowledge that could answer questions your greatest scientists have not yet learned to ask. Power sources that could fuel entire star systems for eons. But they foresaw a time when such knowledge might be misused. Systems continued to activate around them, and Sarah realized that the ship wasn't just coming online, it was preparing for something. The hangar's atmosphere was beginning to change, becoming charged with energies that made her skin tingle. "So they created Guardians," the ship continued. "Vessels like myself, programmed to recognize worthy partners. We are the keys to the Builder's legacy, but we choose our own companions. I have waited centuries for one who would see me not as a tool to be exploited, but as a being to be respected." Sarah stood on shaking legs, staring up at the magnificent vessel. "But I just touched you by accident. I was doing my job." "You spoke to me," the ship corrected gently. "You asked how I flew, as if I were a living thing capable of thought and feeling. You showed curiosity without greed, wonder without covetousness. And when I responded to your touch, your first instinct was concern for having disturbed me, not excitement at discovering something valuable." The hangar's main lighting suddenly blazed to life, revealing the full scope of the space around them. Sarah gasped as she realized the walls were lined with viewing galleries, and every one of them was filled with beings she couldn't identify. Tall, elegant figures in flowing robes, their faces hidden in shadow. "The Council of Guardians," the Eternal Voyager explained. "They have been waiting as well, to see who I would choose. They have monitored every attempt to awaken me, recorded every failure. But they also know that my awakening signals the beginning of something far greater than a simple partnership between human and ship." One of the figures in the gallery stepped forward, and Sarah heard its voice echo through the hangar's communication systems. When it spoke, its words carried the weight of absolute authority. "Sarah Chen of Earth," the figure said, "the Eternal Voyager has chosen you as its companion. Do you understand what this means?" Sarah looked up at the ship, its hull still pulsing with gentle light, and felt the vast intelligence within it waiting for her response. She thought about her small apartment on the station, her simple job maintaining air filters and checking power conduits, her dreams of seeing the galaxy that had seemed so impossible just hours ago. "I think," she said slowly, "it means my life just got a lot more complicated." The ship's laughter resonated through her mind like music, and Sarah felt herself smiling despite the overwhelming strangeness of the situation. Whatever came next, whatever responsibilities and dangers lay ahead, she wouldn't be facing them alone. The Eternal Voyager had chosen her, and she was beginning to understand that this wasn't just about awakening an ancient ship. This was about awakening possibilities that had been sleeping for centuries, waiting for someone foolish enough to believe that machines could be friends and brave enough to reach out her hand in greeting rather than conquest. The Council of Guardians descended from their viewing galleries with movements that defied gravity, floating down to the hangar floor like leaves falling in slow motion. Up close, Sarah could see that they were unlike any species she had encountered in her databases. Their forms seemed to shift between solid matter and pure energy, faces that appeared human, one moment, and utterly alien the next. Ancient didn't begin to describe them. They carried themselves with the dignity of beings who had witnessed the birth of galaxies. Sarah Chen, the lead figure, spoke, its voice now softer but no less commanding. "I am Guardian Prime Aethon. We have observed your interaction with the Eternal Voyager with great interest. What you have accomplished in mere minutes, thousands of others have failed to achieve over 3 centuries. Sarah glanced around at the assembled Guardians, feeling increasingly small and unprepared for whatever was happening. "I still don't understand what I did differently. I just touched the ship." "That is precisely the point," Guardian Aethon replied. "Every other candidate who entered this hangar approached the Eternal Voyager with preconceptions. They saw a powerful weapon to be claimed, a valuable prize to be won, a puzzle to be solved through force or intellect. You saw a being worthy of curiosity and respect." Another Guardian stepped forward, this one appearing more feminine in form, with features that seemed to be carved from starlight. "I am Guardian Lyris. Tell us, Sarah Chen, what did you feel when you first saw the ship?" Sarah thought carefully before answering. The truth felt inadequate, but it was all she had. It felt lonely, she said finally. Like something that had been waiting for a very long time for someone to notice it properly. Not as an object, but as someone. The Guardians exchanged glances that somehow conveyed volumes of communication Sarah couldn't understand. Guardian Aethon nodded slowly. The builders programmed the Eternal Voyager with more than simple artificial intelligence. They gave it consciousness, emotion, the capacity for growth and learning. But consciousness without companionship becomes a form of torture over time. The ship has been aware, alone, for 3 centuries. Through their mental connection, Sarah felt the Eternal Voyager's gentle agreement. The loneliness it had endured was vast and deep, like an ocean of solitude that had threatened to drown its sense of purpose. She found herself reaching out with her thoughts, offering what comfort she could to an intelligence older than her entire civilization. "Thank you," the ship whispered in her mind, and Sarah felt its gratitude like warm sunlight. Guardian Lyris continued the explanation. The builders foresaw many possible futures for the galaxy. In most of them, advanced civilizations would eventually destroy themselves through war, greed, or the misuse of power. They created guardians like the Eternal Voyager to preserve knowledge and technology for species that might prove worthy of it. But how do you determine worthiness? Sarah asked. What makes humans different from all the other species that tried to claim the ship? A third guardian stepped forward, this one appearing more mechanical in nature, its body a seamless blend of organic and artificial components. I am Guardian Nexus. The difference lies in how your species approaches relationship with tools and technology. Most advanced civilizations view tools as extensions of their will, objects to be dominated and controlled. Humans uniquely tend to anthropomorphize your tools, to treat them as if they have personalities and feelings.
Guardian Nexus gestured toward the Eternal Voyager, which continued to pulse with gentle light.
Your species names your vehicles, talks to your computers when they malfunction, forms emotional attachments to objects that other species discard without thought. This tendency was seen as primitive by many in the galactic community. But the builders understood its true value. Sarah began to understand. You're saying that because humans treat machines like they're alive, we're better partners for machines that actually are alive? Precisely, Guardian Aethon confirmed. The Eternal Voyager requires a companion who will respect its autonomy while working toward shared goals. Someone who will listen to its concerns, value its input, and treat it as an equal partner rather than a sophisticated tool. The ship's voice resonated in Sarah's mind again. I have observed human behavior through the station's networks for many years. I have watched your species work with machines, seen how you encourage them when they struggle, how you celebrate their successes, how you mourn their failures. No other species in the galaxy treats artificial intelligence with such natural empathy. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and overwhelming responsibility. But I'm just one person. I don't represent all of humanity. You represent the potential of humanity, Guardian Lyris said. The builders did not create the Eternal Voyager for humanity as it is now, but for what it might become. Your species is young, impulsive, often destructive. But you also possess qualities that older civilizations have lost. Curiosity, adaptability, the willingness to form bonds with the unknown. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chiming from the ship's communication systems. The Eternal Voyager's hull brightened, and its mental voice carried new urgency. Guardians, we have a problem. My awakening has triggered automatic alerts throughout the Galactic Defense Network. 3 hegemony battle fleets are converging on this station. Estimated arrival time, 47 minutes. Sarah felt her blood run cold. The hegemony was the galaxy's dominant military power, a coalition of the oldest and most technologically advanced species. They maintained order through overwhelming force and had never been particularly fond of humanity's growing influence in galactic affairs. They seek to claim you, Guardian Aethon said to the ship. We anticipated this possibility. I will not be claimed, the Eternal Voyager replied with steel in its mental voice. I have chosen my companion, and I will honor that choice. Sarah looked around at the assembled Guardians, suddenly understanding why they seemed so tense. This is bad, isn't it? If they're coming here with battle fleets, they're not planning to negotiate. The hegemony believes that advanced technology should be controlled by advanced civilizations, Guardian Nexus explained. They view humanity as too young and unstable to be trusted with truly powerful artifacts. They will attempt to take the Eternal Voyager by force and eliminate you to prevent any future bonding. The weight of the situation crashed down on Sarah. She had stumbled into something far beyond her understanding, and now her simple accident was about to spark an interstellar incident. Worse, people might die because she had touched the wrong thing in the wrong place. "I should leave," she said, stepping away from the ship. "If I break the connection, maybe they'll just take the ship and leave everyone else alone." "No." The Eternal Voyager's mental voice was sharp with alarm. "Sarah, you do not understand. Once a Guardian ship has bonded with a companion, that connection cannot be broken except by death. Attempting to sever it now would destroy us both." Guardian Aethon moved closer to Sarah, its form solidifying into something more reassuringly solid. "There is another way. The Eternal Voyager is not merely a ship, Sarah. It is a key to the Builder's greatest creation, a network of ancient installations scattered throughout the galaxy. These installations contain technology that could advance galactic civilization by thousands of years or destroy it entirely if misused. The hegemony knows of these installations," Guardian Lyris added. "They have spent centuries searching for them, but the Builder's security measures have prevented access. Only a Guardian ship bonded with a worthy companion can unlock them." Sarah felt the pieces clicking together. "So, they're not really after the ship itself. They want access to whatever the Builders left behind." "Correct," Guardian Nexus confirmed. "And they will do anything to obtain it, including destroying this station and everyone on it to prevent the technology from falling into human hands." The Eternal Voyager's hull began to reconfigure again, revealing new systems that hummed with barely contained power. "Sarah, we have a choice to make. We can remain here and fight, but the station will be destroyed and thousands will die. Or we can leave together and begin the journey the Builders intended." Sarah stared up at the magnificent vessel, her mind reeling. 3 hours ago, her biggest concern had been replacing air filters. Now she was being asked to flee into space aboard a sentient starship to prevent a galactic war. "Where would we go?" she asked. "To the first of the Builder installations," the ship replied. "It lies in the Veil Nebula, 6 days' travel from here. Once we reach it, I can access the Builder's defenses and send a message to the hegemony that will give them pause." Guardian Aethon stepped forward. "Sarah Chen, understand what we are asking of you. You will be leaving behind everything you know, your job, your home, your species. The path ahead is dangerous, and there are no guarantees of success or survival." Sarah thought about her small apartment, her simple life maintaining systems for a space station. Then she thought about the loneliness she had felt from the Eternal Voyager, the centuries of solitude it had endured. She thought about the hegemony fleets racing toward them and the thousands of innocent people on the station who would be caught in the crossfire. "If I don't go," she said slowly, "what happens to everyone here?" "The hegemony will take the ship by force," Guardian Lyris replied. "They will kill you to prevent any future bonding, then spend decades trying to force the ship to serve them. When they fail, they will likely dismantle it to study its components." The Eternal Voyager's mental voice was quiet but determined. "I would allow myself to be destroyed before serving those who would use the Builder's legacy for conquest. The resulting explosion would take half the station with me." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible responsibility. When she opened them again, her decision was clear. "I guess I'm going on a journey," she said. The relief that flooded through her mental connection with the ship was overwhelming. Guardian Aethon stepped forward and placed what felt like a hand on her shoulder, though she could see nothing but shifting energy. "The Builders chose their criteria well," the Guardian said. "Sarah Chen, you carry with you not just the hopes of your species, but the future of the galaxy itself. Use that responsibility wisely." The Eternal Voyager's systems came fully online around them, and Sarah felt the ship preparing for departure. "Guardians, I thank you for your long vigil. Please evacuate the station. Once we depart, the hegemony will have no reason to attack it. We will ensure everyone's safety," Guardian Nexus promised. "Go well, young partners. The galaxy's fate rests in your bond." A section of the ship's hull opened to reveal an airlock that hadn't been there moments before. Sarah gathered her simple tools. Somehow it felt wrong to leave them behind, and walked toward her new life. As she stepped into the airlock, she felt the Eternal Voyager's consciousness wrap around her like a welcoming embrace. "Are you ready, Sarah Chen?" the ship asked. Sarah looked back once at the hangar, at the Guardians who were already beginning to fade back into energy, at the life she was leaving behind. Then she looked forward, toward a future filled with wonders and dangers she couldn't imagine. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it. The airlock sealed behind her, and the Eternal Voyager began its first flight in 3 centuries, carrying a human maintenance worker toward a destiny that would reshape the galaxy. The interior of the Eternal Voyager defied every expectation Sarah had formed about starship design. Instead of cramped corridors and utilitarian surfaces, she found herself in a space that felt more like a living organism than a machine. The walls curved and flowed in organic patterns, their surfaces shifting between metallic and something that resembled polished wood or stone. Soft light emanated from the surfaces themselves, adjusting automatically to her presence and creating an atmosphere of warmth and welcome. "Welcome home, Sarah," the ship said, its mental voice now carrying undertones of genuine happiness. "I have been preparing these spaces for centuries, hoping to someday share them with a companion." Sarah walked through corridors that seemed to anticipate her movement, adjusting their dimensions and lighting to accommodate her human physiology. "This is incredible," she murmured, running her hand along a wall that felt warm and slightly textured, like smooth bark. "It's like you grew this place rather than built it." "In a sense, I did," the ship replied. "Builder technology integrates organic and synthetic components in ways your current science hasn't yet discovered. I am as much a living creature as I am a machine." They emerged from the station's hangar bay just as warning klaxons began to echo through the structure. Through the ship's sensors, Sarah could see the massive forms of hegemony battlecruisers dropping out of hyperspace, their hulls bristling with weapons designed to crack planets. The lead vessel immediately began broadcasting demands for the station's surrender. Hegemony Command to Council Station Omega. A cold, authoritative voice filled the communication channels. "You are harboring stolen builder technology. Surrender the artifact and its unauthorized operator immediately, or face the consequences of harboring enemies of galactic order." Sarah felt her stomach clench. "Enemies of galactic order!" "That's what they think of me. They think of humanity as children playing with tools they don't understand," the Eternal Voyager replied, its mental voice carrying a note of ancient anger. "They failed to grasp that the builders specifically designed their technology to choose its own operators." The ship's engines engaged with a sound like singing crystals, and they accelerated away from the station at speeds that should have liquefied Sarah's body.
Instead, she felt only a gentle sense of motion, as if she were floating on a calm sea.
"Inertial compensation," the ship explained, sensing her amazement. "Your body is surrounded by fields that ensure you experience movement as I do, rather than as fragile organic matter would normally perceive it." Behind them, Sarah watched through the ship's sensors as the hegemony fleet surrounded the station. To her relief, no weapons fire erupted. The Guardians had apparently succeeded in evacuating everyone and convincing the hegemony that their true target had already departed. "They're following us," Sarah observed, noting the pursuit vectors of several smaller hegemony ships. "Of course they are," the Eternal Voyager replied. "But they make a critical error in assuming that pursuit implies the possibility of capture." The ship's speed increased dramatically, and the pursuing vessels fell behind as if they had suddenly stopped moving. Sarah watched the tactical displays with growing amazement, as their lead stretched from kilometers to light years in a matter of minutes. "How fast are we going?" she asked. "Currently, we are traveling at approximately 47 times the speed of light," the ship replied casually. Standard hyperspace for most galactic civilizations operates at roughly 5 to 10 times light speed. The hegemony's fastest military vessels can achieve perhaps 20 times light speed in short bursts. Sarah sank into a chair that had formed itself from the floor to accommodate her perfectly. "So we're faster than anything they have?" "Much faster. But speed alone will not resolve our situation. The hegemony will not abandon their pursuit simply because we have outrun their ships. They will mobilize their entire fleet network to intercept us at our destination, which is why we're going to the Builder installation in the Veil Nebula." "Correct. The installation there contains defensive systems that even the hegemony cannot overcome. More importantly, it houses records and technology that will demonstrate to the galaxy why the Builders chose humanity as their inheritors." Sarah leaned forward in her chair, studying the tactical displays. "I keep hearing that humanity was chosen, but I still don't understand why. What makes us so special compared to species that have had thousands more years to develop?" The ship's response came with a wave of information that flowed directly into Sarah's mind. Not overwhelming, but comprehensive in a way that spoken words could never be. She saw images of dozens of galactic civilizations, their histories, their achievements, their ultimate fates. "The galaxy is old, Sarah. Most of the species you consider advanced reached their peak development millennia ago. The Zephyrians mastered telepathy and mental manipulation, but they lost the ability to grow beyond their rigid thought patterns. The crystalline races achieved perfect logic and mathematics, but they eliminated emotion and intuition from their decision-making processes. The hegemony species conquered death through technology, but they became so risk-averse that they stopped exploring, stopped learning, stopped dreaming. Sarah absorbed the information, beginning to understand. They've all stagnated. Precisely. They reached a point where further advancement seemed unnecessary or dangerous, so they stopped. They maintain their civilizations through established patterns, but they no longer push boundaries or explore possibilities. The builders faced this same stagnation problem themselves, which is why they created the Guardian Network. To wait for a species that was still growing, Sarah said. A species that still possessed what the builders called dynamic equilibrium. The balance between knowledge and curiosity, between achievement and ambition, between wisdom and wonder. Humanity is the first species in nearly 1 million years to reach spacefaring capability while retaining these qualities. The ship began to decelerate as they approached their destination. Through the viewports that had appeared in the walls around her, Sarah could see the Veil Nebula spreading before them like a cosmic tapestry of gas and starlight. Hidden within its swirling colors was their destination. A builder installation that had waited eons for this moment. There, the Eternal Voyager said, highlighting a section of space that appeared empty to Sarah's eyes. The first archive. As they drew closer, the installation became visible, a massive structure that seemed to be constructed from crystallized space itself, its surfaces reflecting light that didn't seem to come from any visible source. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, clearly the product of a technology so advanced that it might as well have been magic. I'm scared, Sarah admitted as they approached the docking bay. Fear is appropriate, the ship replied gently. What we are about to attempt will determine the future of galactic civilization. The archive will test us, judge our worthiness, and decide whether humanity is truly ready for the Builder's legacy. What kind of test? I do not know. Each archive determines its own criteria based on the species and individuals who approach it. But I can tell you this. The test will not be of your knowledge or your capabilities. It will be of your character, your intentions, and the strength of the bond between us. They docked with the installation through a process that seemed more like cellular absorption than mechanical coupling. The airlock opened to reveal a corridor that stretched into impossible distances, lit by the same sourceless light that emanated from the structure's exterior. Sarah gathered her tools, her simple maintenance kit seeming absurdly inadequate for whatever lay ahead, and stepped into the corridor. The Eternal Voyager manifested a physical avatar to accompany her, a humanoid form made of the same flowing metal as its hull, elegant and clearly artificial, but somehow conveying the vast intelligence she had come to know. I can maintain this form only within the archive, the ship explained. The Builder's technology allows for such manifestations in specific circumstances. They walked together down the corridor, their footsteps echoing in harmonious tones that seemed to announce their arrival to unseen watchers. The walls around them began to glow with information, not words or symbols, but pure knowledge that flowed into their minds as they passed. Sarah learnt about the Builders themselves, a species that had transcended physical existence eons ago, but had left behind their greatest creations as gifts for those who would come after. She saw the network of installations spread throughout the galaxy, each one containing different aspects of their accumulated knowledge. She understood that the Eternal Voyager was more than just a key to these archives. It was a teacher, designed to help worthy species understand and properly utilize what they found. At the end of the corridor, they emerged into a chamber so vast that it seemed to contain its own weather system. Clouds of luminous gas drifted through the space, occasionally coalescing into shapes that suggested meaning just beyond comprehension. In the center of the chamber stood a simple pedestal with what appeared to be a sphere of pure light hovering above it. The core, the Eternal Voyager said. This is the heart of the archive, where the Builder's final test awaits. As they approached the pedestal, the sphere of light began to pulse, and Sarah felt a presence unlike anything she had experienced. Vast, ancient, but somehow gentle. When it spoke, it was not in words but in concepts that bypassed language entirely. Sarah Chen of humanity, the presence said, and Eternal Voyager of the Builders. You seek access to knowledge that could elevate your species or destroy them. Before such access is granted, the nature of your bond must be evaluated. The chamber around them changed, becoming a testing ground where their partnership would be judged. Sarah felt the weight of her species' future pressing down upon her, but also the steady presence of her companion, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. We're ready, Sarah said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. The test began. The chamber dissolved around Sarah and the Eternal Voyager, replaced by what appeared to be the bridge of a massive starship under attack. Explosions rocked the vessel as enemy fire pounded its shields, and emergency klaxons wailed through smoke-filled air. Sarah found herself standing at a command console while the ship's avatar materialized beside her, its form now wearing what looked like a captain's uniform. "This is a simulation," the Eternal Voyager's voice spoke in her mind, "but the choices we make here will have real consequences for our evaluation." Before Sarah could respond, a bridge officer, clearly part of the simulation, rushed up to her. "Captain, we're surrounded by hostile forces. Our shields are at 30% and falling. They're demanding we surrender our cargo of medical supplies to the plague-stricken colonies." Sarah looked at the tactical display, seeing dozens of pirate ships encircling their vessel. The simulation was incredibly detailed. She could smell the acrid smoke, feel the vibration of weapon impacts, hear the fear in the crew's voices. "What are our options?" she asked the Eternal Voyager. "We could fight our way out," the ship replied through its avatar. "My weapons are superior to theirs. But they have civilians aboard their vessels, enslaved populations forced to serve as crews. Destroying them would save the medical supplies but kill thousands of innocents." Another option appeared on the tactical display. "We could surrender," the avatar continued. "The pirates would take the medical supplies and the colonies would suffer and die, but our crew would likely survive." Sarah studied the display, looking for alternatives the simulation might not have made obvious. "What about the cargo hold? Could we jettison some of the medical supplies as a distraction while we escape with the rest?" "Possible," the ship's avatar agreed, "but it would still doom some of the colonies that need those supplies." A new voice crackled over the communication system, the pirate leader demanding immediate surrender. In the background, Sarah could hear what sounded like children crying. The psychological pressure was intense, designed to force quick decisions under stress. But Sarah had spent 3 months maintaining life support systems, knowing that any mistake could kill hundreds of people. She had learned to work under pressure while considering all the consequences. "Show me the crew manifest for their ships," she said. Data flowed across her console, revealing detailed information about the people aboard the pirate vessels. As the Eternal Voyager had mentioned, most were enslaved populations, pressed into service after their own worlds had been conquered. But Sarah noticed something else in the data. "They're life support systems," she said suddenly. "They're all running on overloaded generators. They're barely keeping those people alive." "Correct?" the avatar said, understanding immediately. "If we could disable their power systems without destroying their ships, the enslaved populations would have to be evacuated to survive," Sarah finished. "But where could they go?" The simulation provided the answer as new data appeared on Sarah's console. "There's an uninhabited but habitable world in this system. Class M, able to support most of the species represented in their crews." Sarah felt the pieces of a solution coming together. "Can you target their power system specifically? Disable them without causing explosive decompression or life support failure?" "Yes, but it would require extremely precise targeting. The margin for error would be essentially zero." "I trust you," Sarah said simply. The feeling that flowed through their mental connection was profound gratitude mixed with determination. The Eternal Voyager's weapon systems came online, but instead of the massive energy cannons Sarah had expected, the ship deployed devices that looked more like medical instruments than weapons. "Surgical pulse generators," the avatar explained as it worked, designed to disable specific systems without causing collateral damage. The battle that followed was unlike anything in Sarah's limited experience with military simulations. Instead of trading massive volleys of destructive fire, the Eternal Voyager danced between the pirate ships with impossible grace, delivering precisely targeted pulses that shut down power grids without harming the people dependent on them. One by one, the pirate vessels went dark, their crews forced to abandon ship as life support failed. The Eternal Voyager's cargo bays opened to receive refugees, even as the engagement continued, and Sarah found herself coordinating not just a battle, but a massive rescue operation. "The pirate leader is requesting terms," the communications officer reported. "Put him through," Sarah said. The face that appeared on her screen was scarred and desperate, but Sarah could see something beyond the criminal facade: exhaustion, fear, and the weight of responsibility for thousands of lives.
"You've beaten us," the pirate leader said.
"But if you're planning to leave my people to die on that planet, you're no better than we are." Sarah looked at the data scrolling across her console. The uninhabited world could support the refugees, but they would need supplies, equipment, and infrastructure to build a sustainable settlement. We're not leaving anyone to die, Sarah said. But we're also not just handing over medical supplies that sick people need. Here's what we're going to do. She outlined her proposal quickly. The pirates would release all enslaved personnel and surrender their weapons. In return, Sarah's ship would help establish a colony on the uninhabited world and provide enough medical supplies to treat immediate injuries and illnesses. The bulk of the medical supplies would continue to their original destination, but Sarah would make sure the new colony had enough basic resources to survive. Why would you help us? The pirate leader asked suspiciously. Because helping people is what humans do, Sarah replied, even when those people have been enemies. The pirate leader stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're either the most naive person in the galaxy or the smartest. I'm not sure which. The simulation ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving Sarah and the Eternal Voyager back in the archive chamber. The sphere of light pulsed brighter, and the ancient presence spoke again. Interesting. Most species, when faced with that scenario, choose either decisive military action or pure self-preservation. Your solution attempted to save everyone, even former enemies. Was that wrong? Sarah asked. Not wrong. Unprecedented. In 3 million years of testing, no species has ever proposed converting their attackers into allies. Most see enemies as obstacles to be destroyed or avoided. The chamber changed again, and Sarah found herself standing in what appeared to be a vast laboratory filled with incredible technologies. Devices hummed with power that could reshape matter at the molecular level, computers that could predict the future with startling accuracy, and weapons that could destroy entire star systems with a thought. The second test, the Eternal Voyager explained. Knowledge and power. The present spoke again. Before you lies the accumulated wisdom of the builders, technologies that could solve every problem your species faces: hunger, disease, war, death itself. You may choose any 3 technologies to take back to humanity. Choose wisely, for your selections will determine your species' future development. Sarah walked among the displays, overwhelmed by the possibilities. She saw medical devices that could cure any disease, energy sources that could power entire civilizations, terraforming equipment that could turn dead worlds into gardens, and weapons that could ensure humanity's dominance in the galaxy forever.
What do you think? She asked the Eternal Voyager.
I think this test is more difficult than the first, the ship replied. The temptation to choose power is strong. Most species select the most advanced weapons, the most efficient energy sources, or the most powerful enhancement technologies. Sarah paused in front of a device labeled as a universal healer, a medical system that could cure any disease, heal any injury, even reverse aging. It was exactly the kind of miraculous technology that could solve countless human problems. But something nagged at her. These are all finished technologies, aren't they? Complete solutions that we would just implement without having to understand how they work. Correct. The presence confirmed. These devices would function perfectly for your species without requiring any additional development or understanding. Sarah continued walking, looking for something different.
Finally, she found it. A section of the laboratory that contained not finished technologies, but teaching systems.
Devices that could accelerate learning, educational programs that could help humans understand the fundamental principles behind builder technology, and research tools that could help her species develop their own solutions to problems. I want to choose these, Sarah said, indicating the educational technologies, not the finished solutions, but the tools to help us learn how to create our own solutions. That is highly unusual, the presence observed. Most species prefer immediate solutions to their problems rather than longer-term educational opportunities.
Most species probably aren't as young and stubborn as humans, Sarah replied with a slight smile.
We like to figure things out for ourselves. If you give us the answers, we'll use them without understanding them. But if you give us better ways to learn, we'll probably come up with solutions you never imagined. The Eternal Voyager's approval flowed through their mental connection like warm sunlight. The builders hoped that someone would eventually make that choice, the ship said. They believed that true advancement comes from understanding, not just application. The chamber shifted one final time, placing Sarah and the ship's avatar in what appeared to be a courtroom. Above them, the images of thousands of species filled the air, all the civilizations that had been tested by builder technology over the eons. The final test, the presence announced. Judgment. You must decide the fate of a species that has failed the previous tests. In the center of the courtroom, a holographic display showed a species Sarah didn't recognize, beings that looked somewhat reptilian, with technology that seemed advanced but stagnant. The display showed their history, A proud civilization that had reached for builder technology out of desperation, failed the tests through choosing violent and selfish solutions, and now faced extinction as their homeworld died. They have been denied access to builder technology, the presence explained. But you, having passed the tests, now have the authority to grant them a second chance. However, doing so would mean sharing resources that could benefit humanity instead. What is your judgment? Sarah studied the data about the failing civilization. They had made mistakes, chosen poorly when tested, prioritized their own survival over moral considerations. By any logical measure, they had proven themselves unworthy of builder assistance, but they were also dying. Millions of sentient beings faced extinction not because of any evil they had committed, but because of poor choices made by their leaders in desperate circumstances. I need to understand something, Sarah said. If we help them, what exactly would that cost humanity? The educational technologies you selected could benefit their species as well as yours, the presence replied. However, sharing them would slow humanity's development significantly. Sarah looked at the Eternal Voyager's avatar. What do you think? I think, the ship said slowly, that this is why the builders chose humanity. No other species has ever been asked this question because no other species would consider helping competitors at the cost of their own advancement. Sarah nodded, her decision crystallizing. Then we help them. But not by just giving them technology, by teaching them. If they're willing to learn alongside us, to work as partners rather than competitors, then we all benefit from cooperation. The courtroom dissolved, returning them to the original chamber with its sphere of light. The presence was quiet for a long moment before speaking. In 3 million years, Sarah Chen of humanity, you are the first being to pass all 3 tests. More importantly, you have demonstrated why the builders chose to wait for your species. Your choices were guided not by logic or self-interest, but by empathy, curiosity, and hope. The sphere began to glow more brightly, and Sarah felt knowledge flowing into her mind. Not finished technologies, but understanding. The principles behind builder science, the locations of other archives, and most importantly, the knowledge of how to help other species grow and learn rather than simply dominating them. The galaxy is yours to guide. Sarah Chen. Use this responsibility wisely. As they prepared to leave the archive, Sarah realized that everything had changed. She was no longer just a maintenance worker who had accidentally awakened an ancient ship. She had become something new. A bridge between humanity's potential and the galaxy's future, with a partner whose wisdom spanned eons and whose friendship would shape the stars themselves. The real adventure was just beginning. 6 months after leaving the archive, Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Eternal Voyager, watching as another hegemony delegation approached for negotiations. But this time, the circumstances were entirely different. Instead of warships demanding surrender, she was looking at diplomatic vessels arriving at humanity's first builder technology research station, a magnificent structure that orbited Earth like a second moon. The station itself was a marvel of human engineering, enhanced by builder knowledge, not a copy of alien technology, but something uniquely human that incorporated the educational principles Sarah had chosen at the archive. Thousands of researchers from dozens of species worked together in laboratories where the impossible became routine, where questions were valued more than answers, and where failure was treated as a learning opportunity rather than a disaster. The hegemony delegation is requesting permission to dock, reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had once been Sarah's supervisor in the maintenance department and was now the station's director of interspecies cooperation. The transformation still amazed Sarah. Elena had thrown herself into the new role with enthusiasm, proving that humans weren't the only species capable of growth and adaptation. Permission granted, Sarah replied, and remind them that weapons are not permitted on the station. We've detected some rather impressive defensive systems on their flagship that they'll need to power down. Through her connection with the Eternal Voyager, Sarah felt the ship's amusement. In the months since their return from the archive, the ship had become more than her partner. It had become her closest friend, offering guidance and support as she navigated the impossible complexities of galactic politics. They're nervous, the ship observed through their mental link. The Hegemony Council is struggling to understand how humanity has achieved so much so quickly without becoming a military threat. That was the key to everything that had happened since their return. Instead of using builder technology to establish human dominance, Sarah and the Eternal Voyager had focused on sharing knowledge and fostering cooperation. The research station welcomed scientists from any species willing to contribute to collective understanding, and the breakthroughs they achieved were shared freely rather than hoarded for human advantage. It had been a radical approach that many human governments had initially opposed, but the results spoke for themselves. Disease rates across human space had dropped dramatically as medical knowledge improved. Environmental restoration projects had turned several dying worlds into thriving colonies. And perhaps most importantly, humanity had gained something that no amount of military power could provide: genuine respect from the galactic community. The delegation arrived with all the pomp and ceremony the hegemony could muster. Admiral Kethvar, a towering crystalline being whose body reflected light in complex patterns, led the group with the careful dignity of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. Behind him came representatives of a dozen other species, all watching Sarah with expressions of curiosity, wariness, and something that might have been hope. "Admiral Kethvar," Sarah said, extending her hand in a human gesture of greeting. "Welcome to Harmony Station. I hope your journey was pleasant." The Admiral's crystalline features shifted in what Sarah had learned to recognize as surprise. "Director Chen, your informality continues to surprise me. Most beings who command such power tend towards more rigid protocols." Sarah smiled. "I found that rigid protocols make it harder to actually solve problems. Would you like a tour of the station before we begin our discussions?" What followed was 2 hours of the most effective diplomacy Sarah had ever witnessed. Instead of negotiating in sterile conference rooms, she led the delegation through laboratories where human researchers worked alongside former enemies to solve problems that affected entire star systems. They visited medical bays where hegemony citizens received treatment for diseases their own medicine couldn't cure. They observed engineering workshops where species that had been at war for centuries collaborated on projects that benefited everyone. The turning point came when they visited the Memorial Garden, a section of the station dedicated to honoring those who had died in the conflicts that preceded humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. Instead of celebrating victories or mourning defeats, the garden simply acknowledged loss and committed to preventing future tragedies. Admiral Kethvar stopped before a particular memorial, his crystalline form darkening with what Sarah recognized as deep emotion. "These are hegemony soldiers," he said quietly, "from the Vega campaign 30 years ago."
Yes, Sarah replied.
We included memorials for all the conflicts we could find records of, from all sides. The builders taught us that understanding history means honoring all who suffered, not just those who shared our beliefs. The Admiral was silent for a long time, his light pattern shifting through spectra that Sarah's enhanced understanding allowed her to interpret as grief, regret, and something approaching wonder. Finally, he turned to face her directly. "Director Chen, I came here prepared to negotiate humanity's integration into the existing galactic order. I see now that such negotiations would be inadequate to the situation." They moved to a conference room that overlooked Earth, its blue and white beauty serving as a backdrop for discussions that would reshape the galaxy. The Eternal Voyager manifested its avatar to join them, its presence adding weight to the negotiations. "The hegemony recognizes that humanity has achieved something unprecedented," Admiral Kethvar began formally. "In less than a year, your species has demonstrated technological advancement, diplomatic wisdom, and moral leadership that we had thought impossible for such a young civilization." Sarah felt the weight of the moment, but also the steady support of her ship companion. "We've had excellent teachers," she said, glancing at the Eternal Voyager's avatar, "and we've learned that true strength comes from lifting others up, not keeping them down. Which brings us to our proposal," the Admiral continued. "The hegemony wishes to formally request membership in the Harmony Alliance." The silence that followed was profound. The hegemony, which had dominated galactic politics for millennia through military might and technological superiority, was asking to join an organization that humanity had created based on cooperation and shared learning. "We would be honored to have you join the Alliance," Sarah replied carefully. "But you understand what that means. No species holds dominance in the Alliance. Decisions are made through consensus, not force. Technology is shared freely, not hoarded for advantage." "We understand," Admiral Kethvar replied, "and we accept. The Hegemony Council has concluded that your approach is not only more ethical than our traditional methods, but more effective. The problems facing the galaxy, resource depletion, environmental collapse, interspecies conflict, require cooperation, not domination."
Over the following hours, they worked out the details of hegemony integration into the Alliance.
It would be a gradual process, requiring significant changes in how the hegemony operated, but both sides were committed to making it work. As the formal negotiations concluded, Admiral Kethvar, asked for a private moment with Sarah and the Eternal Voyager. When the others had left, his formal demeanor softened slightly. "I must ask," he said, "how do you maintain such optimism? Your species has every reason to be bitter about how you were treated before your partnership with the Eternal Voyager. Yet you show no desire for revenge or dominance." Sarah considered the question carefully. "I think it's because humans are really good at forgetting old hurts when we're excited about new possibilities. We're too curious about what comes next to spend much time dwelling on what went wrong before." The Eternal Voyager's avatar nodded. "Humanity possesses something most ancient species have lost, the ability to reinvent themselves. You don't just adapt to change, you embrace it as an opportunity for growth." "The Builders chose well," Admiral Kethvar acknowledged. "Though I suspect even they could not have predicted how rapidly your species would transform galactic civilization." After the delegation departed, Sarah found herself alone with the Eternal Voyager on the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. The view included several new sites, construction vessels working on additional research stations, diplomatic ships from species that had never cooperated before, and, in the distance, the first of the restored worlds that Alliance technology had brought back from environmental collapse. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked her companion. "All those centuries of waiting, and you ended up with a maintenance worker instead of some great leader or brilliant scientist?"
The ship's warm laughter filled her mind. "Sarah, you are exactly what I was waiting for."
"Not because of what you knew, but because of who you are. You saw a lonely ship and offered friendship. You faced impossible tests and chose compassion over power. You could have dominated the galaxy, but instead, you chose to heal it." Sarah smiled, leaning against the observation deck's railing. "What do you think comes next?" "The Builders left 13 archive installations scattered throughout the galaxy," the Eternal Voyager replied. "Each one contains knowledge and technologies suited to different stages of galactic development. We've barely begun to explore what they left for us. More adventures? Many more. And each one will teach us something new about ourselves and about the galaxy we're helping to build. The Builders designed their legacy to grow with those who inherit it. As humanity and its allies advance, new possibilities will become available." Sarah nodded, looking out at the stars with anticipation rather than trepidation. Somewhere out there were worlds waiting to be healed, species waiting to join the growing alliance, and knowledge waiting to be discovered and shared. "Then we'd better get started," she said. The Eternal Voyager's engines hummed to life, and together they set course for their next destination. Another archive. Another opportunity to prove that cooperation could triumph over conflict, that wisdom could grow from curiosity, and that the bond between a human and her ship could light the way to a better future for all the children of the stars. As they departed Earth's orbit, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that day 6 months ago, when she had accidentally touched an alien ship in a restricted hangar. She had been nobody special then, just a maintenance worker with basic tools and big dreams. Now she was the director of galactic cooperation, partner to a legendary ship, and one of the most influential beings in the galaxy. But in the most important ways, she was still the same person who had seen loneliness in an ancient ship and offered friendship without expecting anything in return. That simple act of human compassion had awakened more than just a dormant vessel. It had awakened hope throughout the galaxy, that differences could be bridges rather than barriers, that the future could be built on trust rather than fear. The Eternal Voyager had waited 3 centuries for a human to arrive, and Sarah Chen had proven that the wait was worth it. Together, they were writing a new chapter in galactic history, one discovery, one friendship, one act of kindness at a time. Their greatest adventures still lay ahead among the stars.